Curious about the price of a Magic Online card? Try our searchable price guide on the right sidebar of any mtgoacademy.com page.
Time for round 1 on the draw, and I'm keeping this hand. I think I would have chosen to draw first had I had the option. I've had pretty good experiences with that in the new format because it's just easier to not fall behind on the board now that there's less ordeals and less decks that are just absolutely crazy. I'm gonna run out the Disciple here. It has a decent chance of holding off the Skink, and it might even get to attack, and then I can maybe swap around a card in my deck if I want that, of course. It's also possible that the Disciple just dies here and then I'm forced to play Baleful Eidolon to block the Skink, which would be a bit worse. Okay, this isn't bad. So, looking at the deck, I should probably just load that. This is a local deck. So for those who don't know, you can always go to your tournament decks, and the one at the bottom, I hope that this works now, is going to be the draft deck that you just submitted. So doing that, I can see exactly what I can get if I trigger the Disciple. So for example, I know that if I keep the Eidolon in hand, then I will be able to get Shipwreck Singer from my deck. If I discard Sealock Monster, I will get Lash of the Whip, and if I discard Silence of the Believers, I could get any of these, which I'm not going to. So that's of course important information. With the discarding Baleful Eidolon to get Shipwreck Singer is kind of an interesting thing to do here. If it survived, which is not clear against blue-red, then it might just take over the game. On the other hand, casting the Baleful Eidolon would allow me to just block the Sigil Skink, which could be even more profitable in the long run. The Sigil Skink is not really doing anything, though, and that probably means that I'm not even interested to attack with the Disciple here. It holds off the Sigil Skink, and it would only allow me to upgrade the Baleful Eidolon, which I'm not even sure would be a good play. And because I have so much to do on 4 and 5, I think I'm not interested in doing any of the other things. Now the one thing I'm not sure about here is whether I need to cast Baleful Eidolon just to have a blocker. I think I do just cast it. It's not a card that I'm keen on bestowing on any of my creatures. The one card that I would want to put it on is Disciple of Deceit, but I kind of don't think that this game is going to be coming down to the Disciple. Maybe later on, but not right now. This Nyxborn, seeing this Nyxborn Rollicker is great because I know that now the Silence of Believers will do a great job, and depending on what I draw, I will attack with a Disciple. Benthic Giant, yeah, see, now this is a good card to transmute into Interpret the Signs, for example, if I want to make absolutely sure that I win the late game. And I doubt that the Disciple is dying here. And I'm just gonna take out the Vaporkin. This is pretty much the perfect scenario. I'm not getting expensive cards from my opponents, but I'm 2-for-1ing him, and I'm staying on 17, so that has to be a good exchange. Okay, this is unfortunate, punishing me a little bit for casting the Eidolon there, and the opponent gets to scry as well. Okay, so now it's my time to decide what to do here. I could actually trade the Sealock Monster for Lash of the Whip to get rid of the Forgeborn Aureotes, which are kind of a problem. On the other hand, like previously mentioned, the Sealock Monster does a pretty good job of holding off everything else, and I kind of don't want to attack with the Disciple anymore. It is going to be a nice blocker. So yeah, I think if I discard the Benthic Giant and just get Interpret the Signs, then that advantage is going to win me the game in the long run. Although just casting Benthic Giant is also pretty good. on this board. I'm just gonna do it though. I think this is going to be game winning and good no matter how bad my draws would otherwise be. I'm on 15, and as long as my opponent doesn't have Portent of Betrayal here on Sealock Monster, I should be doing fine. Okay, Traded Cerberus resolves. Drew a land there. Probably didn't want that order, but let's hope that I can find something here. Only an Omen Speaker. That's a pretty bad Interpret the Signs, of course. Now the 2 lands are going to go on the bottom. That's an easy decision. The question is if I'm happy with just drawing 2 or if I want to gamble with the Interpret the Signs. I don't think I can gamble, so I'm gonna keep the Omen Speaker. Alright, that was pretty awful. On the other hand, the Omen Speaker kind of digs me towards what I want. So the one question is if my opponent can pump his Traded Cerberus, for example, to trade with my Sealock Monster. If it attacks, I might just be forced to take the damage and then threaten to monsters the Sealock Monster next turn. As an 8/8, it still dies to a Titan Strength, but it's a lot safer from other effects. No attacks, no plays. So that means there's the potential for a Sudden Storm. So I'm just gonna try to get as much on the board as possible. Lash of the Whip is nice. Gonna keep that. I'm kind of digging towards Drowning Sorrow here. That would be a great card to find. I'm not interested in attacking here. The Sealock Monster is going to win me the game eventually, but I want to make it an 8/8. And I will allow this Omen Speaker. One thing I can do with the Sealock Monster is turn another Swamp of mine into an island, but that's not really too much of value. I could also give my opponent the second blue, but that's probably better for him. If he wants to destroy his own island, I think I'm fine with that, so no need to give my opponent an advantage there. Forgeborn Aureate still not attacking. It could just get in there and see what happens. Well, yeah, only if my opponent has a trick, of course. So let's see what I draw here. Lash of the Whip, I kind of knew that. So now it could be time to get in with Sealock Monster or to pass one more turn and then Monsterify. Yeah, I think I should play this safe. There's really no reason to overdo it. My opponent kept a card on top and it was this island. So that means there are actually going to be double blue spells heading my way. Okay, Spearpoint Aria, that's interesting. That also pings for 1 because of the Forgeborn Aureates. But then there is a 6/4, which doesn't really do anything. I could still Lash of the Whip it because it's going to be the best creature on the board anyway. I think this is a good use of Lash of the Whip. I don't take the point of damage, and I can always just monsterify this in my turn if I don't draw a relevant card. I'm going to put on a bit of pressure here. This might force my opponent into attacks that aren't really good for him. 2 cards left, so yeah, I like the pressure that the Sealock Monster puts on here. Another Spearpoint Aureate, alright. I'll just use my Omen Speaker to prevent 6 damage here. The Omen Speaker isn't doing much, and I have a lot of blockers for the Skink anyway. That way I can make sure that my opponent will be also chump blocking pretty soon. And this looks pretty fair because I'm attacking for 8 with my opponent on 11. I want to keep around Wavecrash Triton so that if I draw Oracles inside, then I get to trigger it. Alright, interesting. Attacking me for 8. And I'm drawing a Grim Guardian. That's probably not enough. Yeah, my opponent is blocking here. That's why he held that back. I could attack with everything, but then I don't really accomplish anything, and then I'm just dead. Yeah, the Interbreed the Signs was too weak there. Maybe Benthic Giant would have won the game. It's definitely possible. Alright, my opponent blocked, so I will just concede here. Yeah. A bit lacking here. Maybe I should have seen the signs of this not being great with the Sealock Monster and the Benthic Giant already gone. Probably didn't make much sense to discard there. I will be bringing in a couple of cards, most importantly the Annul. My opponent has so many enchantments. And then maybe a few more cheap cards. On the other hand, nothing that dies to the pings or the first strike. So most of my cards in the graveyard just aren't really good against what my opponent is doing. Pillar of War would be okay, but the other cards are fine. I need to be a bit more careful with the Baleful Eidolons because of the Aureate. And Deserter's Quarters I think is still fine, given that my opponent has so many bestow cards. I'm gonna keep it like that. And I'm not gonna play first. I am facing an aggro deck, but my deck really just doesn't want to be attacking, but rather wants to control the game as much as possible. Thassa's Ire is fine. It's going to be good against me, but not back-breaking. Let's hope that my opponent doesn't have a Sigil Skink here. Vaporkin, alright. And I drew a great card in Shipwreck Singer. From now on I really just want to draw a couple of lands to get my spells active. I could actually, yeah, I was just gonna say I could actually just trade with the Vaporkin. That wouldn't really be a bad trade. One card on the bottom. And the other one on the bottom as well. Nyxborn Triton is going to hopefully block something here. Just gonna run that out. Could also attack for 2, who knows. Taking 2 here again is not a big problem. It looks like my opponent is not doing much else either. Speaker is a fine card, but now my deck should really get going. Bottom top. Drown in Sorrow. Alright, that's a nice way of getting rid of the Vaporkin. It's nicer than casting Silence of the Believers, that's for sure. And yeah, I can't really get the Omen Speaker off the table. If I attack with the Triton, then the Omen Speaker blocks, then I would kill my own Triton with the Drown in Sorrow. So, not doing that. Another land, it is not an island, which could be relevant. But I have Lash of the Whip and Benthic Giant, also Silence the Believers to draw. So I want lands. Also I need one more arbitrary land anyway. I think I just kill the Vaporkin I have so many good things to do with my mana, and there's a Thassa's Ire that the potential for me to just get the Vaporkin off the table is really low. This is quite confusing. I don't know why my opponent is suddenly on the Starfish plan. It's not really the plan that you want to have as an aggro deck usually, but who knows. I like both of my blue options here. The Benthic Giant gets blocked a lot easier, and the Rise of Eagles gets me closer to where I want to be. On the other hand, I kind of want to draw one more land, and I don't want to scry lands on top with Rise of Eagles, but I want to scry all lands on the bottom. I could still do that, but I will just try to cast Rise of Eagles after I've drawn the 7th land, because then my scry is more likely to do something relevant. Also, Benthic Giant not able to be targeted by Thassa's Ire. My opponent is quite constricted on mana, so the Thassa's Ire is not really doing much. It looks like my opponent kept the land on top to be able to pump his Omen Speaker. I'm not quite sure. Omen Speaker of my own. So here the Benthic Giant can easily attack, and my opponent is constrained on mana, as I said, so I'm just trying to raise. And I don't mind the advantage of the Starfish for now. If my opponent is actively looking for lands, then I'm not gonna stop him. This is the 7th land, so I'm still gonna put it on the bottom, with the reasoning being that I want the 7th land, but I don't want the land number 8, 9 and 10 and so on. And putting one land on the bottom still means that I will have quite a good chance of just finding a land naturally. And if I continue to draw spells, then I'm also happy. My opponent is somehow fine with just getting lands for his Everflame Eidolon, I suppose. I'm not sure what his plan is here. And this is a pretty sweet Sounds the Believers. Yeah, my opponent could always untap one of his guys. It would have actually been better to untap the other one, so that this wouldn't have dealt 2 damage. Opponent shouldn't really have outs from this stage on. Alright, that worked out so far. Kind of an interesting take there, somehow being aggressive in the beginning, but then trying to out-control me with Starfish and Omen Speakers. So a card that I don't really like is the Deserter's Quarters, if my opponent has the Thassa's Ire to untap them. Triton Fortunato might be a bit better than I thought. And I also like the Eye Gouge, now that I've seen that there's at least 2 Vaporkin running around. So maybe I can fit all these in. Taking out Interpret the Signs, maybe. What else could I take out? The Disciple I kind of like. I like all my cheap stuff. The Black Oak actually doesn't seem too good, given what my opponent has shown, interestingly enough. Still think that I need my cheap cards though. I'm gonna be on the draw. I could take out a 6-drop and a land. That might make the most sense. I could live with lacking one of the islands, and then if I take out a 6-drop, it's going to be the draw spell, because both of the other 6-drops have shown to be quite good. I also expect my opponent to go first here. Yeah, and interesting. 6 lands and an Omen Speaker on the draw. So the Omen Speaker would guarantee me spells. I actually think that I keep this. My opponent is down to 6. Yeah, I'm keeping this. I have a blocker for example, for a Sigil Skink. And Omen Speaker pretty much guarantees that I will find some gas. And then I know that my late game should be pretty good. Alright, drawing 2 spells here is of course optimal. Benthic Giant, wow. I think I'm forced to keep this just because I can't afford to flat out. My ground defense draw, not optimal against the Vaporkin. And it kind of depends if my opponent is going to be playing around the Silence the Believers, which I've drawn for the 3rd time straight. On the other hand, the lone Vaporkin isn't going to kill me, so my opponent is almost forced to put an aura on there. Alright, this is not bad. I still have this to block with. And I drew an Annul, so now I'll just pass the turn here. The Black Oak of Odunos will be able to block the Forgeborn Aureates, and I can even double block. Okay, it doesn't attack though. I think that I just have to take 2 here for 1 more turn, at least. Seeing what my opponent is up to, and then potentially responding with Silence the Believers. Sealock Monster is interesting. The problem is that I don't really have a good blocker for Forgeborn Aureates, so if I run out the monster, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm gonna play this very conservatively. It's also possible that my opponent drops land number 6 and the +2/+2 bestow creature on Vaporkin. Archetype of Imagination. Phew. So if I let this resolve, my opponent attacks with both of his creatures, then I could once again just trade my 2 ground creatures for the Aureates if I silence the archetype, but I'm kind of missing out on the Annul value then. I think I have to Annul here. It's just too strong of a play. Now the big question is if I hold the silence a bit longer. I think I do. I'm getting very close to just being able to cast it for on 2 targets, which is going to be a lot better. I kind of like the Benthic Giant here better than the Sealock Monster, because it's pretty much guaranteed to be a good blocker for the Aureates, whereas the Sealock Monster is kind of in danger of getting pinged for 1, and then I'm not even sure if I want to block. Alright, so far so good. I'm going down to 9. And my opponent has a lot of lands, so that's definitely in my favor. I'm not gonna get greedy here, I'm just planning to cast the Silence of the Believers for 2, and I'm waiting until my opponent attacks to play around bestow creatures. Magma Spray targeting me. That's aggressive. Bottom, top. So now the only question is if I'm also playing around removal spell, counter spells, counter magic, or if I'm just passing the turn to my opponent and see what he's up to. I think I can afford to pass. Okay, immediately passes the turn. I'm just gonna silence now. Alright, that resolved, that was crucial. Otherwise, I would be in trouble. Well, now I just attack for 2 turns and hope that that's enough. Riddle of Lightning targeting me. Bottom, bottom. Bottom. Sigiled Starfish, I take 2. Close 1. And Kragma Butcher as well, alright. There is Lash of the Whip. If I Lash of the Whip the Krogma Butcher, then the Sigil Starfish has to chump block Sealock monster in order for my opponent not to die. So forcing the chump block is definitely worth it. And I'm still on 5. I have a blocker, so I'm hoping that that's going to be sufficient. Alright, that was a bit closer than I thought, with the burn potentially killing me there. On the other hand, I haven't really seen a 7-drop from my opponent, so I think it was more of a desperation move. Alright, a bit of a difficult matchup to start things, but ended up working out. I think game 1, probably a mistake with the Disciple, but yeah, I think my all deck is fine, if not super exciting. Of course, Sand Believer is already the MVP, so let's see if we can reach the finals with this.